Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of WJ Live. I'm Joe Setien. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm a deputy managing editor at the Western Journal. To my right is Michael Austin. He's a reporter at the Western Journal. And to my left is Deborah Van Kempen. She is, as of today, no longer an intern, but rather an editor at the Western Journal.
Woo!
We have got a show full of exciting stuff for you today. We're going to start by talking about Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. We're going to talk about internet freedom, all that fun stuff. We're also going to talk about the left's new narrative of Trump supporters inciting violence and what that means for the future of conservatism. And finally, we're going to talk about AOC and other radical far-left Democrats calling on GOP members of Congress to resign. And we're going to dissect it and analyze it every which way. But first off, we're going to start talking about Section 230. Yes. And that's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, right? As a libertarian and as someone who loves internet freedom. And you've probably seen it in the news recently.
All over.
Yep. With big tech, what they've done is you can't really parse it any other way. They've cracked down on conservatives. They banned President Trump from the platform, which I don't think they should have done. Yep. They're banning a number of conservative voices, people like that. People are losing followers. All this stuff is going on. And you're hearing a lot of talk from people saying we need to repeal Section 230. President Trump has said that Section 230 provides big tech companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter special immunity that no other companies have that shields them from lawsuits. So here's the question. What is Section 230? What does it do? And is repealing it a good idea? Mm-hmm. So the first thing that I want to do is read the relevant section in U.S. Code, federal law, which is only 26 words. Yep. Section 230 is Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act. And here is what this relevant portion reads. No provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. Now, in plain English, what this means is that when you go on Facebook and let's say you write something defamatory about someone, right? And that person wants to sue you for defamation. Mm-hmm. They can sue you, but they can't sue Facebook because Facebook is not legally responsible for your speech. Mm-hmm. Now, what advocates of Section 230 will say is that Section 230 is why we have the free and open internet of today. Without it, if companies like Facebook or Google, companies which we don't really like, as conservatives, as libertarians, I don't think they're doing a very good job. But if they were liable for their users' speech, they wouldn't want anything to be on their platform. They wouldn't want any political speech. They wouldn't want anything controversial. They would moderate the heck out of everything, and you wouldn't really be able to say anything because they wouldn't want to be legally liable for it. Or, in order to avoid this problem altogether, they would not moderate anything. And then what you would have is an internet full of pornography and spam. And if you've ever checked your email spam folder, that's a good idea of what you might expect. Now, I know there are people with good faith arguments who disagree with me on Section 230. A lot of conservatives are saying we should repeal it. So my question for you guys, I'll go to Michael first and then Deborah if you want to chime in.
Yeah.
Should we repeal Section 230? Why or why not?
There's people on both sides saying we repeal it, and they're all wrong. Like, we can't get rid of Section 230. However, I think we can amend some of it a little bit. It protects the blog hosts or whatever companies from
it protects us.
It protects everyone.
The Western Journal when our readers comment.
If you want to censor obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable content, and I think the wording and the protection there, otherwise objectionable content, I think we could change that. You could offer more protections for like people to be able to have minor disagreements without giving them the power to censor that. Mm-hmm. And I think that would, there's a nice middle ground here where you can like allow more types of speech to be free from censorship,
right?
But still allow them to censor porn, still allow places to censor all these other things. And it doesn't take away Section 230. You're just changing some of the protections that were within the overall law.
So you're saying then the companies, the whatever, like Facebook or whatever company is would they be liable?
So you can censor all these different things, except if you censor, like, let's say, minor political disagreements, you would lose your protections.
Okay, but what about who says what's minor or not? How do you draw that line?
I don't know specifically where you would put that, but I'm just saying there's like a difference between like obscene, like there are some pretty clear lines with obscene words and behaviors and ideas and stuff that would just be, common held opinions. And I think, like, I don't have the absolute solution here, but I think you can find a middle line where you can say, okay, you can ban all this content, but you can't ban certain opinions and still keep your protections.
Okay. Now, do you think it's the government's job, though, to basically say you can't ban opinions?
No, like, I'm a free market guy, but after seeing what's happened over the past few days with a lot of this censorship stuff, and I know a lot of people are arguing that the social media platforms are kind of the new public square. I don't think that's completely accurate, but it's becoming increasingly so. And I think when it comes to issues like this, I don't think it's always like, oh, you got to find the middle ground.
Right.
Sometimes it's either on one side or the other. But in this case, I think you can find a middle ground where you don't give social media companies as much censorship powers without totally repealing all of the protections that 230 gives them.
Yeah, because it's not just the protections that Section 230 is giving is not just social media companies or big tech companies. It's literally any. It's anyone.
Right.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this, Deborah?
Yeah, so I feel like I kind of tend to agree with both of you, but in different ways. So when I was thinking about this earlier, I was thinking about it kind of in the sense that I think that we wouldn't have as big of an issue with Section 230 if it wasn't for the events that have been going on in the past few days. If it wasn't for Twitter taking Trump off of their platform, if it wasn't for Amazon and Google and Apple shutting down Parler, if it wasn't for all of these things. And so I think that the biggest issue for me is that I don't believe that we should repeal Section 230, but I do think that we should demand that big tech holds to one standard about who or what they're going to censor on their platforms, because right now it seems like the only standard they have is you don't agree with us.
Yeah. What's the standard, though? Like, who makes the standard? Because it's... who has the power to sort of tell them, make an arbitrary, like, you have to do this? Where does that authority come from?
Yeah, that is the difficult question, because I do think that there's power in free speech that the government shouldn't be able to take away from people and shouldn't be able to take away from even big platforms like Facebook and Twitter. But I do think that ethically they have a moral obligation to be able to conform to one standard for all of their users.
Yes. Oh, I agree.
Yes.
I think most people with, at least on our side, in the liberty movement side, would say, Twitter and Facebook should not be banning conservatives just cause.
Right.
They kind of used two of Trump's more tame tweets, called them, incitement of violence, which I know we'll talk about with your segment later on, Michael. But no one really bought that explanation. They kind of just banned him because they were looking for a reason for a very long time to ban him.
Yeah.
I think ethically and morally you're correct. We should value free speech, and that means we should value free speech for everyone. It means, quite frankly, we should value free speech for Nazis, for neo-Nazis who are despicable people, and we should value free speech for far left people as long as they're not actually calling for violence. And it means we should value free speech for conservatives. And I wish that Facebook and Twitter and all of these platforms would actually realize that.
And to make one thing perfectly clear, I think we should value free speech for these organizations to pick and choose who they want on their platforms, but they have to be consistent with the rules that they are dishing out.
Absolutely.
Ethically, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Ethically, I think you're right. All right. So here's my next question. I've asked, what your opinions are, what you actually think about this. So my grift, as it were, is always to ask, what do you think will happen next? So I guess today's January 12th, in 8 days, we're going to see the Biden administration. I think some things are going to get changed up in Washington as a result of that. What do you expect will happen with Section 230 and with big tech censorship and bias under Joe Biden as president and Democrats in control of both houses of Congress?
It's hard to say. I mean, it seems like there is a pretty big bipartisan push to remove Section 230. And Seems like Republicans are willing to cede some ground,
Yeah.
you might say. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's under threat, which
I
isn't a
agree.
good thing.
No, I agree.
So,
Yeah.
for sure.
It's one of those bipartisan things where it's bipartisan sounds great in theory, right? It's
Yeah.
everyone working together. Unless everyone's working together on something that's really bad.
Yeah.
And then bipartisan's kind of the worst thing ever. And this, I think, is one of those examples where kind of both sides have decided that Section 230 is bad and it needs to go. What do you think, Deborah?
Yeah, definitely. I think that just the push to repeal it over the past few weeks has just been overwhelming, that I think that there's a good chance that they might be able to do so. I don't think it's in our best interest at all, especially considering what we were talking about earlier with, on one end of the spectrum, they could just censor anything and everything that people put out. And on the other end, they could censor nothing and let all of this stuff kind of run rampant on their platforms. But I do think that we're moving in a direction where people want to see it repealed.
Yeah, I unfortunately do agree. I hope that they don't repeal it because I think it's very important. The reason that we have had this internet that we've had for the past 25 years since the Communications Decency Act was passed is, I think, in large part because of Section 230. And I will warn conservatives who I understand are angry about this stuff. They're angry about big tech bias. Repealing Section 230 I do not think is the way to go, and I think it will only make things worse for you.
And, we're in an age where nuance is just completely lost. But I do think there's a solution where you can amend some of the language. And, conservatives would be happy.
Libertarians wouldn't.
Libertarians wouldn't. Democrats might be, some of them would be happy, but the tech companies themselves would be happy that they wouldn't be
the
held.
tech companies want to be regulated.
Yeah.
Which
But
is unfortunate.
yeah, but no, anyone that wants to just repeal the entire thing that's just nonsense.